Hey everybody, this is Ken Tucker with Changescape Web. Welcome to this episode of the Real Producers Partners podcast. Today I'm joined by Katherine Fondren, who is the content coordinator and editor for all Real Producer publications. So welcome, Katherine.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your background, and how did you get into the position that you're in now?
So I guess it's been about 10 years ago. I was doing some writing for a local publication for my neighborhood area. It was kind of a social newsletter for my neighborhood.
Okay.
And then I actually then started my own publication and did that for a few years, a similar one. And then I met someone with Real Producers, and then I got introduced to the St. Louis people and the New Orleans people. And so I've been doing support work for the publications for about 10 years. My background is in advertising. And so, it's weird. It's like for the first time, I'm finally using my degree. When I was 40 years old, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I found myself as a single mom, and I needed to kind of start over and reinvent myself in a career. So I went back to kind of the things again that I was prepared for when I was younger, and just kind of got into the magazine business. So I've been doing this, like I said, for about 10 years now.
Okay. Wow. So say New Orleans for me again.
New Orleans.
You
I'm
say it
from
different. I know. I know. Yeah. I can't pronounce it that way.
yeah.
But yeah. So what all do you do for the publications then? And how many publications do you support?
So I support, I believe, 12 publications now.
Okay.
Um, and I do a couple of what we call HOA publications. They're neighborhood magazines,
Okay.
but I mainly do Real Producers. And I work in Dallas, St. Louis, New Orleans, and also in the Triangle area in North Carolina, and Oklahoma City. And so what I do is the publisher will let me know kind of who we want to feature. Usually they tell me who the features are going to be in the publication, what realtors are kind of up and coming, or just really some rock star agents in the area. And also, we highlight partners as well. And so they'll let me know. Now there's one market that I'm in that I kind of have to go out and find some of these people. And that's Oklahoma. I am located in Oklahoma. And so I'm able to do that. But basically, they send me the features, and then I'll reach out to the features, and I'll coordinate the photo shoots and the interviews for the actual article. And then I'll kind of be the support person and kind of monitor them and be with them every step of the way until the end. And then at the end, I'll kind of put it all together with the photos and with the articles. And then I also edit the publications as well on the front end and back end, just to make sure that, again, everything's correct. And then that we have, everything's laid out nicely. There's certain photos that work better in certain places than others.
Sure.
And so that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell.
Okay. That's a lot.
It is a lot. I'm
So
like a
what
jack
do you,
of all trades here. So
yeah. So what do you like best about all of those things?
the stories about the people,
Okay.
when I had my own publication, I mainly was responsible for the business side and for, selling the ads for the publication and that kind of thing. But what I really loved was the stories, and just the interesting, relationships that can be fostered in some of these areas, things that people have in common that they may not know they have in common. And then they read a story in the magazine and say, "Oh, wait, I'm from here. I grew up here," or I was widowed a few years ago, as well. And so anyway, a lot of that relational stuff. I love hearing the stories of the real estate agents, and a lot of them have really different stories. A lot of them weren't initially in real estate. It wasn't like that was their lifelong dream, was to be
Right.
an agent. It may be something that they kind of thought about, but then ultimately, they may have been doing something completely different. And then got into this industry in one way or another, and now they're just rocking it. And I love seeing that. I've seen so many people where real estate is just their niche, but they don't discover it until later in life. So that's
Yeah.
what I love best about what I do. And just visually, I like the design. I like being able to pick out, design the articles in a way and just see it all come together at the end. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're working on 12 concurrent publications just for Real Producers, doing all of that.
I think out of those, I'm doing 9 real producers,
Okay.
doing all of that, and different ones work different ways. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So, what what advice do you have to give somebody in terms of helping them with their story? I mean, I'm a StoryBrand certified guide,
Okay.
and one of the things that I love about StoryBrand, and I don't know if you're familiar with StoryBrand or not, but a lot of people, when they talk about story, they wind up talking about themselves and their story. What I love about StoryBrand is it flips that on its head and it says, no, you're the guide. The hero of the story is your customer.
Mhm.
And so it looks at it, where the customer has a problem. They're looking for a guide who can help them achieve an outcome, a positive outcome, and avoid a negative outcome. And
Mhm.
that's how you kind of build the story for a brand using StoryBrand's brand script approach. But in real estate, I don't know if many realtors think along those lines. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the first instinct for a lot of the agents that we feature is to, tell about what they do, to tell about how they help people, and what makes things different. What I like to know and what I want to hear is their story, their background. To me, that's the most interesting thing. How did they start out? What were their influences, growing up? What were their influences that led them to where they are today? Who are their mentors, that kind of thing. Because while we're telling these stories is we're inspiring, we're inspiring others, and we're, the agent maybe who's just starting out, or the agent who's kind of a rising star, which is kind of a monthly article that we feature, um, you know, needs to know how did this person do it, how did that person do it. And so we tell those stories, but that's what I kind of have to do is I do a little bit of writing. I'm not the writer on most of the publications that I work with, but I tell my writers, I'm like, I want to know the meat. I don't just want to know, and of our partners as well, like, that this, customer service, and I'm there for them when they need me. I want to hear about what makes you different, what makes you unique. There's a lot of real estate agents out there, and of course their experience and their numbers speak for themselves, but I want to know what makes you different and why should, because I find people know, that any given person knows at least, 3 real estate agents just as friends, or acquaintances. But I want to know really the meat of the story, and I want you to tell me what drives you. So that's pretty much what I like to see.
Okay. So what do you like to do in your free time? Or do you even have any free
I
time?
really don't. I don't have very much free time. I am heavily involved in competitive marching bands with
Hmm,
my children.
okay.
So we had our first big competition over the weekend, and they won. Yay! Uh,
Yay.
they won it all, which was great. I love to work out. I enjoy fitness. When I was living down in Louisiana, I love to sport fish, but I don't get to do that very often. I love football. I have my own fantasy football league of all ladies. And I have a book club. So I try to keep busy, low key. I used to play golf in another life, but 4 hours a day just isn't enough. I don't have that free time.
Golf takes a lot of time. It's nice to get outside, but and they've been talking about trying to shorten some courses, creating executive courses where there are 12 holes and things like that. And I think that might be a good idea.
Yes, yes. I started out as a 9-holer when my kids were small, and because I didn't have time, and so
Yeah.
I really should get out and do some of that. The weather's been nice here, so but yeah, golf is a great game, but you've got to work at it. You've got to do it, pretty regularly. And like I said, in my old life, I was able to do that, but nowadays I can't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, how long have you been in the Tulsa area?
So I've been in the Tulsa area about 15 years.
Okay.
We relocated here with the oil field. I was born and raised in South Louisiana. But it's interesting because my grandfather is actually from the Tulsa area.
Hmm.
So it's kind of full circle for me. I don't have any family here now, but that's what I come from, a town of 14,000 people in South Louisiana near New Orleans, the New Orleans area. And I love it, and I miss the culture, and I miss the food and all that stuff. But this is a good family place, and there's really some great opportunities for my kids.
Yeah. I had a full scholarship to the University of Tulsa and turned it
Oh,
down.
really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was to study petroleum engineering, and
Okay.
I decided that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I stayed in Springfield, Missouri, where I grew up. So got
Okay.
my undergraduate and graduate degrees there. So Missouri State. But
Well, we love going to Branson. Me and the kids go there a few times a year, so
yeah,
we go through Springfield, go down.
yeah, yeah. I used to go to Tulsa a lot. I had several of my best friends from high school all went ahead and went down there. So I've made several trips down there.
Okay.
Beautiful city.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's progressive. They've got this new gathering place. The next time you ever come down here, it's
Hmm.
amazing. It's like a central park almost. It's a
Really?
city funded, private donations, a foundation funded it, and it's public. It's amazing. It's like an amusement park, but it's free.
Wow. Yeah. Nice. So what marketing strategies do you think work best for many of the folks that you work with? Do you have any success stories, or is there any advice that you could give our listeners to help them either tell a more compelling story or take advantage of any other marketing ideas that you've come across?
Well, I think thinking outside the box is important. I deal with a lot of these real estate agents, and I've used different real estate agents, and I think the difference between some of them is, you're putting my house on the MLS, you're putting in the paper or whatever, print media you can, but what else? Like, what else are you doing? And I see some of these agents using social media. I think obviously social media is huge, and if someone's not using it, they need to. And there's lots of things that we do in Real Producers with that, and with some of the other neighborhood magazines I do. So I would say that would be something just outside the box. Just little things, little touches. If you can, get in front of as many people as you can for networking events, social events, networking groups. I think those are really good things. I think again, in the age of technology, it's important to be on that, but also I think there's a need and maybe a longing too for some face-to-face interaction and to really communicate and kind of be human. So I think, I think niche marketing, I think marketing that's different, is the key, whether it be some of these publications, or more specialized, things, social media, TikTok, Instagram, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, social media has changed a lot over the last 18 months. I mean, it's stunning. I saw a study from Social Insiders that talked about this time last year compared to, or this time compared to this time last year. Statistics: Instagram's organic reach has dropped 32%. Facebook is down to less than 5% of organic reach. So unless you have a real strategy
Mhm.
behind what you're doing, social media is not really working the way it was. Now, and then, when you look at studies, TikTok has now surpassed the number one site that people go to, period. They've eclipsed Google. If you're younger than 35, you may be you're probably more likely to use TikTok and Instagram than you are doing a Google search these
Right.
days. So these trends they're stunning to me, and then you can't rule out YouTube either, because the power of video is ridiculous, and YouTube is still one of the most popular, if not the most popular platform out there.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not just slap a post on Facebook and think you're good.
That's right, and there are people that I've dealt with who just do that.
Right.
They only handle the social media stuff, and I mean that's a huge sector of that people are getting into more and more. You just look at your kids. I look at my kids; they're 13 and 15. And you're right. Well, I saw on a TikTok that this is what you should do. I looked at the 10 most popular this on TikTok. So that is what they do. So I look to them, and hopefully they can teach me. And I think it's always important to be open and willing to learn. I feel like the older you get, which I'm almost 50 now, the older you get, it's like some people are averse to learning new things and learning to do technology, but you really can't nowadays. You can't get away with not, getting into it and jumping on that train.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of education, that's kind of a good segue. A question I wanted to ask you is, what are you currently reading, or is there a book that has had a huge impact on you personally or professionally?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to think. I read a lot of fiction, so not a whole lot of the nonfiction books. Probably the most interesting read I had last year. I had never read the Bible all the way,
Okay.
and so there's this Bible in a Year podcast that's pretty popular. I got into podcasts during the pandemic. I had never listened to a podcast before. I got into that and some of the YouTube channels during COVID, during the lockdown, and so just reading it through and through. Of course, I'm a Catholic. I grew up going to church, but we don't know our Bible. I will say as much sometimes as some of the other Christian faiths. So I read that and I thought it was so interesting. They were just things, that I had never, I knew about, but never really knew about or understood. And so I was able to understand that. And then again, it's using those principles in your day-to-day life. And the book is 2,000 years old, but yet it still pertains today. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What's the most interesting project you've worked on in the last 6 months?
oh gosh. I've launched a new magazine. That's always interesting to do. I've launched a few before, but that was pretty interesting. I'm developing a website to use in my business. And then another project that I'm working on that I'm trying to get serious on, but as you know, I don't have a whole lot of time, is writing something for myself. So I've been working, taking notes. I've got notebooks of stories, chapters, characters, and all that stuff. So I attended a writers conference a few months ago, and that was my first one. So hopefully I might just publish something one day.
Fiction or
Yeah, fiction, totally fiction. I'm
all
all
right.
about the escape.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've always preferred to read fiction. Right now I'm a little frustrated because, I love what I do, and I just absorb this stuff. I mean, and so most of my reading these days is all about trying to stay up to date with, hey, Yelp's doing this or Google's doing that or TikTok is now, blah blah blah, and so because I want to stay up to date as much as I can, and that's just I mean I love learning. So but I've always loved fiction. I've never written fiction. I have written a couple of books,
Okay.
which is nice. And anybody who's thinking about writing a book, I mean, I think it's an incredibly rewarding experience. I did the self publication process through Amazon.
Okay.
And honestly, one of the easiest ways to get started, if you're thinking about writing, a nonfiction book, where it's information based, is to just, get an interview partner, write down a bunch of questions, and just have them ask you those questions, and use that as the raw transcript, and record it, transcribe it, and you do that for several hours, and you've got a wealth of material that you can take and sift through. And obviously it has to be seriously edited, but I find that a lot of people, it's easier for them to talk than it is to, sit down in front of a keyboard or pen and pencil or pen and paper and start writing something. And so that's how I was able to do my books.
Okay, great. I'm always looking for advice. Like I said, the writers conference I attended a few months ago in Oklahoma City was amazing, and I just kind of was there, really quiet, just kind of
Yeah,
listening and learning, and
yeah,
I would sit next to someone, and he would say, everybody's like, "Oh, have you published a book? Have you published your book yet?" And this guy's like, "Yeah, I published 12 of them already," and I'm like,
wow,
really? But
yeah,
the publishing thing has just sort of opened it up for so many people. And even if no one buys it, I just want to be able to do that and just say, like, this
right,
is mine, this is my story, it's out there,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
done. So
yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, for a lot of businesses, it's actually now kind of the new business card,
yeah, yeah,
you know. So, but yeah, fiction, that's interesting. So
yeah,
that would definitely be fun.
yeah, for sure.
Cool. So do you have any kind of an internal goal that you're trying to accomplish with that?
Well, I had the high hopes after the conference that I was going to get on a writing a schedule, and I was going to get my calendar out and block off so many minutes a day. But to be quite honest, Ken, it feels like work. When I try to sit down and start writing for myself, it just feels like work because
Yeah,
I kind of work with copy all day, and I
right.
do some writing also for work. And so I'm just like, gosh, I just want to, I'm inspired, but I might do that. Have you seen the camp NaNoWriMo? It's
No.
it's a national thing, and every summer they do it, and I think they do it once or twice during the year. But it's a community of people that get together and write, and they write on a schedule, and then they can share ideas, they can hold each other accountable. And so there are some pretty, I can't think of them right now, but some bestsellers that have been published that way through this
Hmm,
NaNoWriMo camp thing. So
okay.
I would like to hopefully do that. That's kind of my main goal. I have some goals, with my business that I would like to support. A certain, I'm almost where I want to be with that. But I also, kind of want to have a balance, more of a work-life balance, because I do have two kids who are getting into some fun things in life, and I want to be there for them. So
Yeah,
definitely working on balance, with my life and my work.
yeah, absolutely. What would be one thing that you would ask our watchers and listeners if they could help you out?
Hmm. Um, Again, with your story, if we're doing a story on them, be honest. Be very honest about your experience and who you are and where you come from and where you want to be, not what you think other people might want to hear, or might be the right thing to say. I feel like, again, honesty in these stories make the best stories. So that would help me out. Of course, responding to the writers when they're trying to schedule an interview and the photographers, because unfortunately that's something I have to deal with sometimes. We are on deadlines, so we want to make sure we
Right.
meet all of our deadlines.
Yeah,
But I would say, just, on your story, just be genuine, and
yeah,
that it comes across that way. And that's a great thing to write about, is you.
yeah. Well, I've talked to several photographers lately, and I know a lot of people are really self-conscious when they're doing a photo shoot and things like that. So is there, I mean, is there that same kind of parallel with people when they're thinking about being interviewed, do you think?
Hmm. You mean like preparation?
Well, just self-conscious, I mean, a lot of people aren't super comfortable talking about themselves, or, they don't think that people will care about, some of their backstory and history and things like that. I mean, do you find that, or?
I find that a lot of people don't know what to say, or they're
Yeah,
like, I don't think my life's very interesting, or what I do is, what I do. I love what I do, but, and so I think if you get them excited,
right.
it just depends on the interviewer. Again, I don't do a whole lot of writing anymore, but when I do, I try to make it as fun as possible. This is low stress. Try to be relatable. This is, and we of course let our people review their story to fact check it and make sure that everything is in there that they want to say.
Yeah.
So sometimes we do have people that, are reserved, but again, it's up to the writer to just kind of make them feel at ease. And we'll print, if they don't want to print something, we won't print it. But again, making them feel comfortable and the relevance of what that may be, kind of making them see, hey, I think that's a great story. You might want to include that because there may be a single mom who, thought that it was too much, but then, now she may realize, hey, this is something I can do on the side. And then eventually I can quit my day job and do real estate full time and fulfill the dreams for my family. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Katherine. I enjoyed our conversation.
same here. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks,
All right.
Ken.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Goodbye.